Alright. So, this is DCS. I'm in VR right now. I bought a used headset for that a little while ago. We're going to recenter everything here. And going to get everything set. So, this is DCS. Turn all these labels off because they're distracting. I'm in VR right now, so that's why the point of view is moving around. I bought a used headset. Been trying to optimize the settings. It's a little pixelated in here, but it performs a little better. There's a training jet, which is one of the other planes you can learn on, taking off over there. But I'm in a P-51 Mustang. It is cold. We've got canopy open. You can see behind me. You can see, I think we're on like a Russian air base. So, but anyway, we're going to start up a plane, and that's what's all involved today. So, I'm going to use keys for most of the switches on the dash, but I also have a mouse pointer for a couple of things I don't have keyed because I only use them like once. So, we're going to turn on our battery. Turn on our generator. We're going to turn on fuel pump. Open the cover for the starter. Turn on our ignition system. Turn on fuel flow. And we're not on a dirt runway, so we can open this filter. And we're going to raise our flaps all the way. They're down right now, and they won't come up till the hydraulic pressure is up because they're made of cloth, and so they were always lowered so that you didn't stand on them getting in and out of the plane. They're also usually lowered at the time of landing. And we'll probably let this jet get out of our way before we start up. What we'll do first, I'm going to use my pedals to press. I've got rudder pedals down here at the bottom, and you can see them move. But they've also got a tilt feature, which is the brakes. So we're going to put brakes on the landing gear, and we're actually going to put our parking brake on so we can start the engine without it moving. We're going to turn on our gun sights just so I can have a point of reference. You can see them up there. In the diopter sight, there's a reflection, so it's actually a gyroscope that would have been in here that's reflecting those into a piece of glass, like a heads-up display. Pretty, and it'll actually move with the plane to counter your motion. So we're going to set our propeller speed, which is kind of like our transmission, all the way up. We're going to set the throttle here, and what the left hand would have been on the throttle, you'd rotate it in real life to change the near or far on the distance of your target. So, for example, if we switch over to gyro only, we get a much simpler sight. And what we want to do is set the size of the plane we think we're shooting at. And then on the fly, depending on how far you are, you can see this dial moves. And that's like a bicycle type control on the pilot's grip. And that opens and closes how far you should be lining up your shot with the airplane's wings. So that's what we've got in there. But we want our throttle at about 25%, just enough to get the plane started. We're going to prime the engine for a few seconds. And then we're going to start up. Make sure parking brake is on, yeah. And start up. Start, hold ignition. And then quickly turn our choke up to run. And our plane starts. And I'll jump to outside perspective so you can see the plane I'm in. So we're in one of the blue-nosed bastards, which were a flight group out of southeast England around the time of D-Day. These are actually before D-Day, or they would have large zebra stripes on the wings. But you can change whatever livery you want to fly around with. And VR makes it much easier to spot things. Like I can see that jet up there, who's been just taken off and I think circling the runway. He's like a stand-in for the trainer. that would be on this mission. Yeah, I'm gonna get to the runway and pop the brakes, which is that way. So push down both my brakes. It lets off the parking brake. Power up, and then we use the rudder pedals to turn the rear wheel to turn. But you can see it only turns a little. So we use the brakes, then right side brake, kind of like a tank, to turn tighter, and then I'm going to hold that to control. And see, the VR makes it much easier to look out the window just like you would in a real car or airplane. And we're going to steer over to the runway. Not going to hit those little lights. Alright. Get out onto the flat here. And then we need to wait our engine temperature come up just a little bit before we take off. But we're almost there. Idling around is a good way to heat the plane up. The P-51 is a tail dragger, which means its nose is in the air so that it can have this very large propeller without it hitting the ground. The downside is you can't see over the nose of the airplane, so we need to get on the center line of the airstrip while we can see it. And we're going to do that right now. Oop, almost. There we go. And we need that temperature gauge in the bottom right there to come up over 40 C so that the oil is thin enough for takeoff. Otherwise, in this simulation, the plane will lock up the engine. It'll conk out, and I will be in a big problem real fast. So we're going to close the cockpit. Reduces the noise a little. Rev up the engine just a little bit, see if we can get over temp here, since we're not really worried about the engine long term, since it is fake. And this is the way I won't take crash on takeoff. Get that 40. Alright, and then takeoff, we're going to set the propeller has so much power, we're actually going to move this rudder trim wheel over to the right to keep it from pulling the plane off the runway. And we're going to want our stick all the way back. That keeps that wheel, that steering wheel in the back, engaged under the tail. If you push it forward, it will unlock, and it's for parking or towing the plane. We don't want that, so we're going to keep the stick all the way back. We're going to keep the brakes on, and we're going to push the manifold pressure up through about the 40 above the green bar there at the top. And we're going to accelerate up to about 50 through takeoff. I'm going to use the rudder pedals to keep the plane centered on the runway. Then I'm going to let the nose down as we get up to about 110 miles per hour, and then lift off the runway. That's ideal. I'm still getting some of this down. Depending on the weight of the airplane, bombs, fuel, it can change it quite a bit. The takeoff characteristics. So let's take off. You want to move that throttle up slowly. It changes how the plane is trying to pull on the runway. Keep it centered as much as possible. And as we're approaching 100 miles an hour, we're going to let on forward on the stick. And I probably didn't need to do that. I'm really light, so bounced a little. Get our gear up as quickly as possible. We want to see that green light go red, show us it's going up, and we want to see that light go off, meaning the gear is up and locked. So now we would want to maintain a climb about 170 miles an hour, means we're going up as fast as we can. We're climbing about 2,000 feet per minute, which is the dial there, and we're keeping the horizon nice and flat. We can actually back the throttle off to about our high performance cruise, which is about 45 manifold pressure and 2,700 RPM. So you control the engine in two different ways. You control the power to the engine, but you also control the speed at which you're asking the engine to go, which is weird. It's not like a car, but you're pretty much telling it to govern itself up to a certain speed of rotation, but then also how much torque is going out. So it's a little different than when you think of a car, and so you have to keep those two balanced. And because it's called prop on top, that propeller ball right there. It needs to stay above the manifold pressure. If you give it more power than it has a speed governor open to go, it will lock up the engine eventually, because you're essentially overloading a propeller that's trying to slow itself down through a gearbox, and you'll ruin the engine. So you always want to make sure that the throttle is below the propeller. So we're flying over what is ostensibly a Russian or East Black Sea town in the what is it? The Caucasus Mountains, I think this map is called, which is just one of the generic maps to learn on. There's some World War II maps I've downloaded. But yeah, so we would climb, and we can bank here. And one of the things you have to watch is this little black ball in this indicator is your slip. So it's telling you which way the plane is going versus where it's pointed. And depending on the power of the engine, you can see it's out of the center right now. So we're going to adjust our rudder back until it's nice and centered. Because otherwise what it's doing is it's pulling the plane cockeyed, and you're getting an inefficient flight. It also means you're not getting a smoothness of control as the plane's fighting you all the time. And you have to adjust that a lot. Anytime you adjust the power to the engine, it affects how much pull there is one way or the other, which makes it really interesting when you're trying to dive bomb, because you usually want to cut the engine before you do that. Well, let's roll in, we'll take a look at the city, and then I'll wrap this up. We're actually going to do just what I said. We're going to roll in, go in for a dive here. P-51 has laminar wings, meaning it flies very fast, but it does not turn very quickly. So we're not going to get into too steep a dive, because otherwise you're not going to come out of it. What it'll do is called a high-speed stall, which is the plane will just want to roll over on its belly, or belly up, and pull down, which, if you're really high up, not a big deal. If you're this low, you're in trouble. And you can hear when you're starting to pull into that, because in real life you would feel the plane shudder. In the game, it gives you the whistle of the gun ports, which was a real thing, but is probably a bit exaggerated here. See, if I pull too hard back on the stick, you can hear that whistle. And that is a warning sign that I am going to put this plane into too hard of a maneuver, and it is going to lose forward energy. Check out this town just a little bit more. I've got it on, again, fairly low resolution, because otherwise you can make this game real pretty, but it doesn't run great in VR then. That's the kind of the trade-off. And again, this plane is set up for ground strafe or for air-to-air, and there's nothing to shoot at in the air. There's that jet, I don't know where he went, but we can switch over to ground attack. Pretend some of these buildings are particularly hostile, I guess. A red tower building. Yeah, not very reactive to all this. The other vehicles and things would be a bit more responsive. And that's it.